I am a lamp that burns for one person. I've been here for as long as I can remember, perched on the edge of a wooden desk, my base slightly wobbly from years of use, my shade a little crooked from the time he accidentally knocked me over during one of his late-night writing frenzies. I am a lamp, a simple, unassuming desk lamp. But to him, I am more than that. I am his light in the darkness, his companion in solitude, his silent witness to the stories he weaves. His name is Ethan, a writer, or at least that's what he calls himself. I've seen him through countless nights, his fingers dancing across the keyboard, his brow furrowed in concentration. The room is always quiet, save for the soft hum of my bulb and the rhythmic tapping of his keys. Sometimes he mutters to himself, testing out dialogue or cursing at a sentence that refuses to come together. Other times, he just stares at the screen, his face a canvas of doubt and frustration. I've always admired him, not because he's perfect, far from it. Ethan is messy, forgetful, and prone to bouts of self-pity. But he's also passionate, determined, and endlessly creative. He pours his soul into his work, and I like to think that, in some small way, I help him do that. My light bathes his desk, illuminating the pages of his notebooks, the keys of his laptop, the coffee stains on his manuscripts. I am his constant, his anchor in the storm of his thoughts. But lately, something has changed. It started subtly. A missed night here, a shorter writing session there. At first I didn't think much of it. Everyone needs a break, right? But then the gaps grew longer. Days turned into weeks, and the once familiar sound of his typing became a distant memory. He stopped sitting at the desk altogether, opting instead to spend his evenings on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. The room felt colder, emptier, without the warmth of his presence. I tried to tell myself it was just a phase. Writers go through slumps all the time. He'd come back to me eventually. He had to. But as the weeks turned into months, doubt began to creep in. What if he didn't need me anymore? What if my light, once so essential to his process, had become irrelevant? The thought was unbearable. One night, as he sat on the couch with a beer in hand, I decided to take a closer look. It wasn't easy. I'm not exactly mobile, but I managed to tilt my shade just enough to catch a glimpse of his face. He looked lost. His eyes were dull, his shoulders slumped, his expression one of quiet despair. It was as if the fire that once burned so brightly within him had been extinguished. I wanted to help him, to reignite that spark, but what could I do? I'm just a lamp. I can't write his stories for him. I can't whisper words of encouragement or offer a comforting embrace. All I can do is shine. So that's what I did. I turned myself on, casting a warm, golden glow across the room. It wasn't much, but it was all I had to give. To my surprise, he noticed. He turned his head, his eyes narrowing as he looked at me. For a moment, I thought he might get up, come over to the desk, and sit down to write. But then he shook his head, muttered something under his breath, and turned back to the TV. My light flickered. A pang of disappointment coursing through me. Still, I refused to give up. Every night, I turned myself on, hoping against hope that he would return to me. And then, one evening, he did. It was late, well past midnight, when he finally approached the desk. He looked tired, his hair disheveled, his clothes rumpled, but there was a glimmer of something in his eyes. Determination, maybe, or desperation. He sat down, opened his laptop, and began to type. The sound was hesitant at first, like a musician tuning their instrument, but it soon grew steadier, more confident. I watched in silent awe as the words poured out of him, his fingers moving with a speed and precision I hadn't seen in months. For hours, he wrote, stopping only to take a sip of water or rub his temples. The room came alive with his energy, the air crackling with creativity. I basked in the glow of his resurgence, my light shining brighter than ever. It was as if we were feeding off each other, his passion fueling my brightness, my warmth inspiring his words. By the time he finished, the first rays of dawn were peeking through the curtains. He leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile on his face, and let out a deep sigh. "That's it," he whispered. "That's the one." I didn't know what he meant, but I didn't need to. All that mattered was that he was back. My writer, my Ethan, had found his way out of the darkness, and I, his humble lamp, had been there to guide him. But our story doesn't end there, because life, like writing, is full of twists and turns, and sometimes the light we think we're shining for others ends up illuminating something within ourselves. Ethan's return to the desk was the beginning of something new, something I hadn't anticipated. He didn't just write that night. He kept coming back, night after night, as if he were making up for lost time. The stories he wrote were different now. They were raw, vulnerable, and deeply personal. I could feel the weight of his emotions in every keystroke, the way his fingers trembled when he paused to think, the way his breath hitched when he reread a particularly poignant line. I began to notice things I hadn't before, the way his eyes would glisten when he wrote about love, the way his jaw tightened when he tackled themes of loss and regret. He wasn't just writing stories, he was pouring his soul onto the page, exorcising his demons, confronting his fears. And I was there for all of it, my light a steady presence in his tumultuous world. One night, as he sat at the desk, his face illuminated by the soft glow of my bulb, he did something unexpected. He reached out and touched my base, his fingers lingering for a moment, as if he were drawing strength from me. "You've been with me through it all, haven't you?" he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I'd do without you." If I could have spoken, I would have told him that I felt the same way, that his stories gave my light purpose, that his presence made my existence meaningful. But I couldn't speak, so I did the only thing I could. I shone a little brighter, my light wrapping around him like a warm embrace. As the weeks went by, Ethan's work began to gain recognition. He started receiving emails from readers who had stumbled upon his stories online, people who were moved by his words, who saw themselves in his characters, who found solace in his honesty. He printed out some of their messages and pinned them to the corkboard above the desk. "Thank you for reminding me I'm not alone," one of them read. "Your story saved me," said another. I could see the pride in his eyes as he read those messages, the way his shoulders straightened, the way his smile lingered just a little longer. He was making a difference, and I was so proud of him. But with success came new challenges. The more recognition he received, the higher the expectations became. Deadlines loomed, pressure mounted, and the self-doubt that had once paralyzed him began to creep back in. I could see it in the way he rubbed his temples, the way he stared at the screen for hours without typing a single word, the way he muttered, "What if I'm not good enough?" under his breath. It broke my heart to see him like that, but I refused to let him give up. Every night I turned myself on, my light a silent reminder that he wasn't alone. And slowly, he began to push through the doubt, one word at a time. He wasn't just writing for himself anymore. He was writing for the people who believed in him, for the readers who found hope in his stories, for the lamp that refused to let him sit in darkness. Then, one evening, something happened that changed everything. Ethan was in the middle of a particularly intense writing session when the power went out. The room was plunged into darkness, the hum of my bulb replaced by an eerie silence. I panicked. Without my light, how would he continue? How would he find his way? But Ethan didn't panic. He sat there for a moment, his hands resting on the keyboard, before letting out a soft chuckle. "Guess it's just you and me, huh?" he said, his voice calm and steady. He reached for his phone, turned on the flashlight, and placed it on the desk. The light was harsh and cold, nothing like the warm glow I provided, but it was enough to keep him going. As he typed away, I realized something profound. Ethan didn't need me as much as I thought he did. He had found his own light, his own strength, his own purpose. And while that realization stung, it also filled me with a sense of pride. I had done my job. I had been his light in the darkness, his companion in solitude, his silent witness to his journey. And now, he was ready to shine on his own. When the power came back on, Ethan looked at me and smiled. "Thanks for sticking with me," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." I wanted to tell him that I felt the same way, that his stories had given my light meaning, that his presence had made my existence worthwhile. But I couldn't speak, so I did the only thing I could. I shone a little brighter, my light wrapping around him like a warm embrace. And in that moment, I realized something else. I wasn't just a lamp that burned for one person. I was a part of something bigger, something beautiful, something that would live on in the stories Ethan wrote, in the lives he touched, in the light he carried within him. I am a lamp, a simple, unassuming desk lamp, but to Ethan, I was so much more. And to me, he was everything.